A short spider story. The Black Madonna by A. W. Wyville. Houses with shuttered windows. Houses with hangdog air running to ruin. Houses about which strange tales are told. Tales of strange happenings. Such will always fire the imagination. Of such a house I tell. It was situated on the outskirts of a small village, a village famed in the Revolutionary War. I lingered and gathered its history bit by bit, a story that will draw smiles from the unbelieving, yet caused thoughtful men to pause, as I paused, pondering over the strange ways in which fate sometimes even scores. The house had been vacant several years, shunned by villagers. They did not claim that it was haunted. Its gruesome story forbade tenants. The last occupants had been two brothers, one a tall, hawk-nosed, surly character, and the younger a pleasant chap with dark brown eyes, a small mustache, slight of build. Chemists they were, brilliant chemists we heard. They hired no one, doing their own cooking and general work. Partitions had been torn out and an expensive laboratory installed. Bottles upon bottles, retorts and electric furnaces of the most elaborate description. Word went around that they were working on a great chemical problem, the solution of which would revolutionize a major industry. Although the elder brother was seldom seen on the village streets, the younger would often pass through on his way to the city, driving an expensive car. Sometimes he would stop and talk. He talked on many subjects, but never his work. All such questions he skillfully parried. While his main interests were centered on his work, he also spent some time on a hobby, zoology. He would often be seen in the fields on a summer day, equipped with a long-handled net. A strange combination of interests. Lights glowed in their house until far into the night. A tall figure could be seen moving behind the shades. Not long after the brothers had moved in, there came to the village one night the sound of a muffled explosion. Lurid flames shot from the house of mystery. The village fire department soon had the flames under control, however. To do so, they had been obliged to enter the laboratory, from whence the explosion took place. What they saw was the talk of the town, although the occupants had got them out as soon as they could, seeming to fear that they would see too much. Some people wondered if perhaps they were not counterfeiters. The brothers repaired the damage, and the talk died down. The next happening of interest came from a different quarter. It came in a bunch of bananas. A local grocer found it. A hairy spider with bright red spots on its back. It was then in the middle of winter, and the repulsive thing was in a torpid state from the cold. Instead of killing it, the grocer, perhaps with an eye for advertising, placed it in a small wire cage with a lighted electric lamp for warmth. He did not misjudge its potential attraction qualities. Revived by the warmth, it was soon crawling around its cage, seeking an opening. The whole town had seen it and speculated about it when it was drawn to the attention of the young chemist, he being interested in bugs and such, as they put it. One look at the spider and the young man drew in his breath sharply. "A Black Madonna!" he whispered. Of course, that meant nothing to the villagers. He explained. It seemed that the Black Madonna is the most poisonous spider known to science. Death almost inevitably follows its bite. This information put the grocer into a cold sweat, for he remembered how free he had been in handling it. He was for immediately destroying it. The young chemist offered to buy it, alive. The grocer dubiously assented. After all, it was a clear profit. We never saw it again. Spring came in cold. Severe snowstorms followed one on another's heels. The two brothers were more or less isolated. Late wayfarers reported that the lights burned as brightly as ever in the house. From this point, my story will have to be partly guesswork and deductions from what came to light later. Upon arriving at the house with his prisoner, the young man took it to his room to examine at his leisure, kept it warm and fed it gnats. It seemed to thrive. However, he did not let it interfere with his research work. The two brothers were working independently toward the same goal. The elder worked at night, while his brother utilized the daylight hours. Each kept his progress to himself. An odd arrangement. The younger man won. When his brother rose from his bed one afternoon, having worried through the night, he found the other with shining eyes. Yes, it had been an accident. Just stumbled on it. Meant international fame. Just stumbled on it. Just an accident. The words repeated themselves in the elder brother's brain. He almost hated his kinsman. All his work for nothing. More than life itself, he craved the fame that would come with success. His brother heeded it not. Honor was reaching for him, and he was blind to the other's expression. An expression not good to look upon. He locked his notes in the cabinet and went to his room. Here he made a discovery that sobered him for a minute. The Black Madonna had escaped. Carefully and thoughtfully he searched the room. The spider was nowhere to be found. The window was partly open, and he decided that it must have departed through the opening. Well, it would soon perish in the cold. Long into the evening his brother stayed in the laboratory. After the first questioning, he did not seem curious regarding the achievement. The other wondered. Oh well, he would feel better and congratulate him tomorrow. He was sometimes like that. Sometimes a poor sport. The elder slowly went over his notes. Sometimes he stared out the window and fought a hideous temptation. His brother came in and worked at his desk. The other's eyes rested upon his back. It would be so easy to hide and explain it. No, he must not think such things. His hands clenched until the knuckles showed white. Some time later, the younger arose, said good night, and went to his room. Could he do it? A madness came upon him. He bided his time. Several hours later, the door to his brother's room opened, and a tall, dark figure entered. A knife makes no sound, and it was soon over. The dirt basement provided a good burial ground. He washed his hands, a maniacal gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. Better go up to the room again and make sure that there were no blood spots. People who make sudden trips to the city and disappear do not leave blood spots on their beds. Oh, he would be clever. The room was soon put in order. As he was leaving, he felt a sudden chill. His brother's old sweater was hanging on the bedpost. Callously, he put it on. Mustn't catch cold. Now for those notes. Carefully, methodically, he transcribed them into his own handwriting. His scientific training triumphed over his madness for the time being. He was again the chemist. As he worked, life stirred. Life in the pocket of the old sweater. A hairy leg reached for the edge of the pocket. Perhaps it was the heat of the man's body. Slowly, the revolting creature worked its way up the sweater. The man rode on. Inch by inch, the hairy legs reached toward the collar, unnoticed. Then, for some reason, the spider turned. On the underside of his arm it worked, swaying with the motion of the writing. It continued testing its way. On the edge of the cuff it paused, then lowered itself onto the moving hand. The man dropped the pencil with an oath. The next second, a long shiver ran over him. The blood drained from his face. The pupils of his eyes became pinpricks. Days later, the villagers found him, dead, staring, 2 tiny red spots on his hand, the evidence of his attempted theft in front of him. A short, tragic tale is The Statement of Justin Parker by August Derleth. My sole desire in writing this is to place before the public all that I know of the singular facts attending the disappearance of Michael Salisbury, retired, from his home on Salisbury Plain on the 17th day of December last. Michael Salisbury and I had always been the best of friends since childhood. We were together always, until late 1916, when he went to the African veldt to spend over 7 years there. He had hardly returned. As a matter of fact, it was on the train that I met him, before I left for the veldt. The incident is rather peculiar, and it may aid in a manner to throw light on what followed. I was on board a train leaving London for Liverpool. He had just come in from Liverpool. He came rushing into my compartment, 2 bags in his hands, looking nervously right and left. Suddenly he saw me. He stopped, dropped his bags, and came over to sit down beside me. "My dear Justin, think of seeing you here." It was obvious to me from the beginning that the man didn't have the least idea what he was saying. "Just returned from the veldt, Michael?" I asked. "Aren't you on the wrong train? This one isn't going anywhere near your home." "Oh, no, right train, all right. Connections, everything tip-top. Liverpool train, isn't it?" "Yes," I said. "Didn't you just come from there?" "To be sure, but I've the right train. I'll fool them." "Fool them?" I repeated, astonished. "Whatever are you talking about?" I began to think that the veldt had seriously affected Michael Salisbury. "My valet and housekeeper! Fool them! Come in on a different train." The prevarication was too obvious. All the while he was looking from the car windows and staring up and down the aisles at the people in the car. Besides, his valet had been with him to the veldt. Of course, he might have returned before him. There was that possibility. We talked for some time, he in the same disconnected manner, with his eyes on everything at once, especially the car windows. The moment the train stopped at the first station outside London, he jumped up with his bags, which some well-meaning porter had a time before removing from the aisle. On the platform he turned and shouted, "Right, after all, Justin! It is the wrong train!" I went on to Liverpool, deeply concerned over this strange and unaccountable action on the part of Michael Salisbury. At Liverpool, I took a boat for Calais, and 3 months later I was in the great veldt, which my friend had just left. I returned from the veldt on the 5th of December. On the 7th, I received a short note from Michael Salisbury. It was somewhat disconnected, but I gathered that he had earnestly wished me to come down to his home some distance out on the plain and spend a few days with him. I have given this note to the press, and I believe that it is now in the possession of Messrs. Montague and Saunders of Chancery Lane. I arrived on the 10th of December, and I found a somewhat different Michael Salisbury from the one I had seen some years before. His rooms were hung in solid, unrelieved black. He himself wore nothing but black, stalking around most of the time in a heavy black dressing gown. His hair looked as if it had never been combed, and it had begun to gray at the temples. He had grown a beard, which covered more than half of his face. He wore a gold-rimmed pince-nez with smoked glass. These melancholy conditions were wholly contrary to Michael Salisbury's temperament, and you can imagine that I was not slow to ask him what it all meant. But he ventured little by way of explanation. "It's hard to cast a shadow on black, Justin," he said, an offering which whetted my curiosity still more. "But why this aversion to shadows?" I asked at once. "The angle at which a shadow is cast determines, for a distant observer, exactly the position of the object cast of it." This answer puzzled me beyond words. Surely you cannot blame me when I say that I began to cast sidelong glances at Michael Salisbury, fearing at first for his sanity. I remonstrated with him. "Never mind, Justin," he said at last. "Tomorrow I'll tell you all about it." Then he laughed and said, "And I'll explain just how it happened that I, of all people, got the wrong train at London a few years ago." And with that he packed me off to bed, for it was already late at night when I arrived. It seemed to me a good sign that he remembered, as a jest, that adventure of 4 years before, and I went to bed thoroughly convinced that I was to hear something far out of the ordinary. And I was not disappointed. A great majority of those who read this will not attach a bit of significance or truth to the strange narrative that Michael Salisbury told me on the morning of the 11th of December. I admit that I myself doubted the tale at first. "It's rather an incredible tale, Justin," he began. "Nevertheless, I'll vouch for it. When I came from the veldt 4 years ago, I had with me a diamond, which I had taken from the domain of certain pygmy tribes in the veldt. The diamond was part of a makeshift idol, worshipped by these people. These dark-skinned pygmies, strangely enough, were not a fraction as barbaric as their neighbors on all sides. Their priests were the educated men of the village. 3 of them could speak English, having learned it from an English explorer some years before I came. These 3 priests were the historians of the village, the chief tradesmen, and, most important, the guardian of the idol their people worshipped. They were robed in costumes decidedly similar to those of Egyptian priests of Ra. They wore ornaments of beaten gold and silver, and used great quantities of beaten copper. Under their leadership, the pygmies had established a trade with more civilized colonies along the coast. The weapons these pygmies used were a queer sort of blowguns, through which they projected grayish pellets, soft things composed of thousands of minute microbes encysted, covered with a skin of gelatin. As yet, I have no knowledge of these microbes, save that they devoured anything they came to, with the exception of glass or metal. When these pellets are shot from the guns, they break upon impact, and the microbes emerge, multiplying so rapidly as to look like a puddle of gray water spreading out on all sides. I have seen an entire tribe of savages wiped out by this horror. Acid is the only thing that will kill it. I think that there is only one other man that I know of who has an experience with these microbes, and that is Dr. Maxwell, who terms it the Grey Death. You can easily see that I had plenty of reason to be frightened when I got off the train in London, only to discover that I had been trailed all the way from Africa by one of the pygmy priests, who stood not far behind me on the platform. On the verge of panic, I dashed through the crowd, hoping to elude him, and at last I boarded the first train that came to hand, the train on which you were setting out for Liverpool. When I saw you on the train, you, who knew that I was arriving from the veldt that day, and when I saw you had already seen me, I had only one course to take. That was to make up something to throw you off the track. I wasn't going to fill you full of silly fears until I was positively sure of my pursuit. Though, God knows, I was sure, only I hated to admit it to myself. Then I told you, on the spur of the moment, that I was playing some silly prank upon my servants. I knew the tale was totally awry, and almost laughed at the expression on your face. But it was the best I could do at the time. I left the train when I was finally sure I had not been followed, and hired a car to drive me all the way to my home here on the plain. I saw nothing of the pygmy priest for over 4 years after. Then, one day last October, while wandering about on the moor, I noticed someone in the ruined chapel. You've seen the chapel, haven't you? I thought you had. At any rate, I thought nothing of the matter at the moment, thinking perhaps that some children had wandered out here, which is not so unusual as it sounds. But when I got closer to look into it, I found on the ground near the ruined structure an amulet of beaten gold. For a moment I was stunned, but I knew whom I had so fortunately spied, and I fled as fast as I could go to the confines of my home. He stopped and pointed all around him with his stick to the black hangings and to his own black robe. I've seen these pygmies strike an object with their accusing pellets when it was securely out of sight. They judge its position exactly by an angle at which its shadow is thrown. As I said, I don't quite know how to take this story. At first, I was all for the theory that he had made a mistake about being followed, but he would have none of it, and actually became angry when I persisted. Now he showed me the diamond that he said he had risked his life for, and to do it justice, I must say that I thought it well worth such a risk. He had kept the jewel hidden in a secret safe behind his bookcases. Never once did Michael Salisbury cease his vigilance. He dressed always in black and maintained a constant watch. On one occasion he confided in me that there was nothing he feared so much as the dreaded lama sorcery, a form of animal magnetism practiced by African tribes, and with which he was familiar. He never ventured to explain this magnetism to me. Consequently, I am totally in the dark concerning it. For 5 days nothing happened to break the monotony of life out on the plain. On the 6th day, December 17th, Michael Salisbury vanished. He must have disappeared in the early morning, for we had been having a lengthy conversation the night before, and neither of us had retired before midnight. His clothes were all in his room, with the exception of his black silk dressing gown and his slippers. The first thing I did when I had ascertained that Michael Salisbury was nowhere about was to look for the gem. It was gone. As no one but Michael and myself knew the combination and the location of that safe, Michael must have taken it. But where could a man have gone in his dressing gown? For some time I was more than confident he would turn up sometime during the day. I don't know what possessed me to go to the ruined chapel that afternoon, but I went, crossing the moor just as the sun began to sink below the horizon. The chapel was an ordinary affair, except that it was antique. Old stone, broken panes of painted glass, the usual thing. Its floor, however, was unusual. It was of earth, and the insidious advance of water under the earth had made it soggy. I saw nothing unusual about the structure when I approached it. I made a note of the fact that I would have to hurry and get back to the house before darkness settled over the moor, and began to wonder whether or not Michael would have returned. I entered the chapel, proceeding cautiously over the wet, miry soil. But abruptly I stopped. In the mud before me lay a grayish bubble that contracted and expanded in a sort of rhythmic movement about something that lay in its midst. I bent closer, the better to see what it was. As I did so, my handkerchief fell from my coat pocket, fell directly into this gray bubble. More quickly than I can tell, the grayish mass had spread over the cloth and devoured it. Again I caught sight of the object in the midst of it, and in that moment I recognized it. It was that recognition that made me turn and run from the chapel, running haphazardly across the moor. And it was that knowledge that sent me to Liverpool that same night to see whether or not a small brown man, answering to the description of an African pygmy from the veldt, had taken passage on any outgoing ship. As if in confirmation to my recognition of the thing in the chapel, I found that a man such as the one I sought had taken passage bound for Calais, and I have wired there to have him seized on landing and searched for the gem I know he has. But I have some knowledge of these priests. The gem will not be found, yet it is the only thing I could have done, for the thing in the midst of that seething bubble was the gold-rimmed pince-nez that Michael Salisbury had worn when last I saw him. The Three-Storied House by August W. Derleth. The three men paused for a moment in the glare of the street lamp. Two of them slowly and deliberately lit cigarettes. The third stared back along the street with a curiously defiant expression on his face. "Oh, come, Johnson. If it's that three-storied house that's bothering you, we'll go back and investigate it." The man called Johnson shrugged his shoulders and turned. The three men walked silently on for a distance somewhat over a city block. "Why is it, Johnson, that you can't ever pass a three-storied house without a shudder of repugnance? It gets on a fellow's nerves after a bit. I'm getting so that I watch for every three-storied house that I pass." "If I've told you once, I've told you a dozen times that the story's too utterly like a fairy tale to repeat in public. It's humiliating to have you observe me like this, but it can't possibly be helped. It's in me, that's all. Can't you let it go at that?" "I can't, Johnson. I'm ready to believe anything if it will explain your peculiar aversion to three-storied houses. Come with me to my home." "If I told it at all, it would be when walking. I could never sit still, I know." "Anything, Johnson, but tell it." A faint stillness had settled over the city. For about 10 minutes, no one said a word. 4 blocks had been traversed. Johnson began to speak in a subdued voice. When I first came to this city 7 years ago, I roomed and boarded in a 3-storied house out on the west side. It was a queer old ramshackle building, and I remember that when I first saw it, I did not consider that it might be inhabited. It was owned and controlled by an old lady who dressed always in black silk and wore an odd little frill cap on her white hair. It was the woman, not the house, that drew me. She had a curiously irresistible appeal. When you're alone in a strange city, you notice such things. I roomed on the 3rd floor. I tried to get a room on the 2nd, but it appeared that the 2nd floor was leased for a lifetime and more. I didn't say anything to the landlady about the 2nd floor for a long time after, not until I was forced to speak out about it. Both of you have roomed in houses like that at some time in your lives, I'll wager, and both of you know the natural curiosity that afflicts you, a curiosity to see what your fellow tenants are like. I met the tenants of the house one by one, but never once did the old lady offer to introduce me to the tenants of the 2nd floor. This singular slip on her part annoyed me, but I had some satisfaction in knowing that no one else in the house had met the mysterious tenants. Life went on in the rooming house as life goes on in all rooming houses. I made friends with the neighbors, very open people who were decidedly not in sympathy with back fence gossip. They asked me one after another what I thought of my landlady, how I liked the house, and the stereotyped questions in that same vein. But a young lady puzzled me one day. I had been standing with her before her home for all of half an hour, when suddenly she asked me what I thought of the noisy tenants in my landlady's 2nd floor. I admitted that they were noisy and was forced to confess that I had not as yet met them. She smiled and looked over at the 2nd floor. I followed her gaze. Even from there, the curtains on the windows looked curiously old. That question was asked me more than once after that, and I began to wonder what instigated it. And I began to redouble my efforts to catch sight of the tenants on the 2nd floor. But to no avail. I neither saw them nor heard them leave their rooms. Neither of them ever appeared at table. There were at least 2 of them, as I could tell from the noise I had heard. I began to speak to my fellow roomers about the people on the 2nd floor. They were as mystified as I, though not one of them allowed himself to be bothered by tenants they had not yet met. One of them suggested that perhaps they were acrobats, judging by the noise they made. Another supposed that they were eccentrics of one type or another. Yet another suggested that there might be no one in the rooms at all. Maybe someone had committed suicide there, or a murder had been done there, or something to keep the landlady from renting the room. This last was, of course, a humorous remark, for all of us had been annoyed by the constant noise of the people below us. One night I woke up from a sound sleep. A curious scratching sound, followed by a soft moaning, came to my ears. It seemed to come from the room immediately below mine. For a while I listened. Then abruptly I thought of the humorous suggestion made by the tenant some while ago, a suggestion that had been given a queer basis by the girl of my acquaintance across the street, the same girl who had drawn my attention to the noise of the tenants of the floor below. The scratching sound increased in intensity. Suddenly it developed into a steady pounding. The moaning stopped at once. For a while everything was quiet. Then a shrill scream came from the room below, and again silence. My neighbor in the next room got up and pounded on the floor to quiet them. I imitated his example. The scratching sound was resumed again after a half hour, and the entire program was repeated. More than one of us on the third floor were robbed of sleep that night. The same thing happened on successive nights. More pranks developed, to the greater annoyance of all the tenants. Complaints to the landlady did absolutely no good. She could do nothing, for they were life tenants. "You have grounds to put them out," I said. "It would be impossible to put them out," she answered. "They have been here so long." At last, one night, the noise was too intolerable for expression. Sitting up in bed, I began to wonder whether or not my key would fit into the lock of the room below me, from which most of the noise came. Pounding on the floor had brought no response, save possibly an increase in the outrageous disturbances. I began seriously to contemplate entering in on the tenants below and unbraiding them as they deserved. The scratching sound had been coupled with a violent pounding. The noise of sobbing was mingled with moans. There was a noise as of scuffling, as if a chair or two had been overturned. It was too much. I got up and slipped on my dressing gown. I got my key from my coat pocket and without hesitation went downstairs to their door. I pounded on the door and in a loud voice demanded instant silence. But the noise continued. There are some things, boys, that no one ever forgets. For instance, if your ordinary routine is changed, is interrupted by something so far from your sphere in life that your comprehension cannot embrace it. From that night on, I could never tolerate three-story houses. I put my key into the lock. I threw open the door. There was an abrupt cessation of all noise. But what I saw petrified me. I could not move. There was nothing, absolutely nothing in that room. The light from the street lamp shone on countless layers of undisturbed dust.
The Hermit of Ghost Mountain by C. Franklin Miller. It's gorgeous, sir. Perfectly gorgeous. Fascinating, too. There's something akin to madness in a storm like this. It makes wild clear, though. Thunder, lightning, wind, rain, roar, and awfulness. I can scarcely keep from throwing myself right into the thick of it all. But that wouldn't be wise. Too many trees are crashing down, and it's too dark to see. Besides, there's no telling how much of the slope has been washed away. Ooh, how she howls! It's the wildest party the old woods have had in many a moon. I'll swear I never felt the big hill tremble so, and I've lived up here on the top nigh on to 50 years. Feels as if the whole face of the cliff were being blasted away. I'll say you were lucky, son, in stumbling across my shack when you did. Lucky, too, that you didn't go tumbling down over the edge in the blackness. That's a drop of more than 500 feet and nothing but rocks at the bottom. Sort of makes you shiver to think of it, eh? But even that would be better than a struggle with one of the ghosts that go prowling around these woods. There's fully a score of them, and they'll all be out in the forest this night. They just naturally go crazy whenever a gale sweeps across the top. Bad weather is our hobby up here, sir. But you needn't feel concerned. You're safe enough in here with the candles lit, even though it is a bit gloomy. Guess you think I'm not much of a host, but you'll have to overlook my ways, sir. It's very seldom that anyone gets to the top of Ghost Mountain, and my manners suffer from disuse. The folks down in the valley never venture near. Some say that they've heard strange sounds up here among the trees. Others say that they've seen queer sights. But they all agree that the old hill is haunted. That's how it got its name. According to an old story, Ghost Mountain was once the retreat for a band of outlaws who terrorized the country for miles around. Finally, they got to fighting among themselves and killed each other off. According to the story, that fight is still raging and can be seen and heard during a storm like this if anyone is bold enough to venture up the slope. Some mighty peculiar thefts have occurred down there in the valley. I've heard it said that food, drugs, and chemicals were the articles sought. But strange enough, the robbers have never been apprehended. The stolen goods have never been found. That's why the folks down there insist that the ghosts of the outlaws are still operating. Perhaps that's why you're up here tonight. Wanted to see those ghosts for yourself, eh? Reporter, maybe? You got the grit, son. It was a bold move. Bold blood. This is gorgeous. You came just in time, sir. Yes, indeed. Science can make use of you. But here, slip off those sopping clothes and crawl into this blanket. I'll put another log on the fire. Your things'll soon be dry. Come on, son, you might as well. You won't be able to venture out anyway until the storm has gone down. There, you look real comfortable now. We can't let your blood get chilled. That would be unpardonable. I'll pour out a drink that will warm you up. Guess you need it after that soaking. It's a pretty color, isn't it, son? Good stuff, too. Yes, it does look like blood, but what if it is? I've swallowed some viler liquids with the same color in my time, and they were called wine. Come, what's in a name? No? Well, I like it. It's such beautiful red. Mighty nourishing, too, especially if it's fresh. When I was younger, there was nothing to me but skin and bones. I wasn't expected to live. Someone suggested I drink a quart of ox blood every day. At first it was worse than any medicine, but that was only a queer idea. I grew to like it. It made me immensely strong in time. Look at me, son. You would never guess that I was a puny weakling at one time. You might not believe that I've passed the century marked in age. This gray head of mine has gone uncovered through more than 100 winters, and I haven't known sickness in years. That is my secret, son. Maybe I'll tell it to you. Listen, you hear that wailing? Sounds like wind in the trees, but it's not. That's the ghost of Jerry McFadden. I know them all. Odd. He's the wildest one in the lot. Always comes prowling around at this hour, whether the moon shines or not, and starts his wailing. Jerry was as strong as an ox and no more intelligent. Just a hopeless idiot. There was nothing courageous about him. He simply didn't know enough to keep out of danger. But he had strong blood. That was his redeeming feature. Strong blood. So I used him. He hates me like poison. Sets a lot of traps to get me, but I'm wise in the ways of ghosts. He tries to creep into my brain whenever I'm off guard and make me do things which might cause death. Sounds unusual for an idiot, but they do say that death is a wonderful healer. Why, whenever I get near, now you'll hear a sobbing that will just urging me to jump, but I always manage to fight him off. Whew, what a crash. Seems to be getting worse outside. My toes are tingling yet from the shock. Felt as though it split the old hill right in two. Now you'll hear a sobbing that will just about wring your heart. Over here under the window on the outside. Hear it? Poor little Nina. A perfect beauty in her time and young. Young blood. Just another martyr to science. She's scared to death of thunder and always comes a-crying whenever the noise is especially piercing. I was hoping that Jerry would be able to comfort her, but it seems he is too busy watching me. But about Jerry, I didn't finish, did I? I killed him. Now, don't look that way. This was years ago when the big idea first dawned. Why, you aren't afraid, are you, son? Of course not. Bold blood can't be scared. Everybody down in the valley knows that I killed Jerry. At least I've told them, but they won't believe me. They just wag their heads and smile. Some tap their temples with their fingers as if to say I've gone mad. Fools! I killed Jerry, and that is the truth. Nothing could be plainer. And some way or another he wandered into the shack and was a-sitting right there where you are when I first saw him. I'd been experimenting for some time, years in fact, and when I saw his powerful frame, the big idea came to me in a flash. Strong blood. I plunged my knife straight through his heart and turned it round and round. He squealed like a stuck pig and bled just as much. Yes, Jerry was a husky ox. Did you ever see blood gush out of a dying heart, son? It's a gorgeous sight, and interesting. At first it shoots out thick and rich like oil. It's a beautiful color. Jerry's was especially fine. Then it wells up fitfully for a spell and finally eases off into a tiny trickle. I'd like for you to see it, son. Jerry started his tricks from the very first. He made me feel scared for a spell, but that is how I came to make the mistake I did. I thought I had to hide his body, so I drained him down in the workshop and stuffed him underneath the bunk there. It was a mistake to keep it secret. For days I could not rid my mind of that dead carcass. The thought kept me from sleeping, too. My nerves grew jumpy and violent pains began to knock in my head. It got so that I could see that body wherever I looked. I could feel his heart thumping and burning away at my back whenever I tried to lie in the bunk. The time came when the beat of that heart never left me at all. It made no difference whether I was in the shack or out in the woods. I could always hear its monotonous thump, thump, thump. It felt like a hammer knocking in my ears, and I began to get dizzy spells. The horrible feeling possessed me that the beat of that heart was chipping off bits of my brain with each thump. I thought I was going mad. But a madman cannot reason, son. Always remember that. I began to reason. What was it that troubled me? The heart of Jerry McFadden. And why? Because I was nursing an overpowering secret. The remedy was simple. I'd reveal my secret and smother the heart. So I pulled out Jerry's body. His heart stuck like glue. Jerry hates me like poison. But I managed to pry it loose. I sealed it in a bottle. Here it is, see? Quite a little thing to kick up such a rumpus. That hole in the center is where I turned the knife. The smaller lump in there is the heart of little Nina. I thought she would be good company for Jerry, but he doesn't seem to pay much attention to her. He just wails around in the treetops while she cries outside the window there. Listen, do you hear them? Jerry can't be much of a ladies' man. He could at least be gallant on a night like this. Are you sure you won't have a drink, son? You look as pale as a ghost. Remember, it's strengthening. No? Well, I hate to drink alone, but here's to you. Yes, I bottled Jerry's heart and made my way down into the valley. They told me that a body had been fished out of the river and identified as Jerry's. No one would believe my story. They just smiled behind my back and whispered that the hermit was going mad. I suppose my tale did sound wild, and instead of jailing me, they pitied me. Someone even suggested that I come down in the valley to live. They didn't know it, but that was impossible. I had my work to do up here. They thought Ghost Mountain was getting on my nerves. Funny that. Why, son, I love this big old hill. And the more ghosts, the merrier. They understand me, and I understand them. Except for Jerry. Are you smiling, sir? I saw the corners of your mouth twitch. Don't make the same mistake that the valley folk did. Don't be a fool. No sooner had I bottled up Jerry's heart than he started wailing. Just like that. Hear him? I thought he wanted company. Nina was such a pretty little thing, and I felt sure Jerry would be pleased. I found her lying in the midst of an auto smash-up near the bottom of the falls. She said her machine had hurdled the road at the top. She was badly jarred, and her left leg was broken, but she had no serious injuries. I carried her up here and tried to set the broken bone. She fainted. I wish you could have seen her then, son. She was a beautiful sight, and young blood. So I used her. I severed an artery in each wrist. I doubted if she ever even knew what happened. But I didn't make the same mistake as I had with Jerry. Only a fool would do that. I dug out her heart while it was still warm and put it in the bottle there. Again, those fools down below refused to believe me. They found her machine where I'd left it and said that her body was caught among the rocks deep under the surface, where no one could get at it, because of the forces of the stream pouring over the side. I and my tales were beginning to be a joke. The hermit of Ghost Mountain was surely mad, but perfectly harmless. He was simply too old to live alone. That's why I don't bother them any more with my tales. I haven't been seen down there in years. Truth is stranger than fiction. No one believes fiction. It's easier to believe a lie. Listen, you hear that groaning outside the door? That's the ghost of old Buck Weaver. He was old enough to die anyway. Old blood. Didn't have enough in his body to keep him warm. But what he had was useful. A little drop of old blood will go a long way, son. You are smiling, sir, just like the rest. Fools! Fools! All of you. The day will come when the hermit of Ghost Mountain will be famous. Then no one will smile. They'll call me a genius instead of mad. They'll live for centuries and revere my name, for I've unearthed that thing which the world has been seeking since the days of Ponce de Leon. I've discovered the spring of life. You think I'm mad. I can see it in your eyes. Oh, you skeptics, you disbelievers. You've stood in the way of progress ever since the dawn of man. Even I had to steal away from your laughter and jeers and hide away among the phantoms of Ghost Mountain, a martyr to science. But in spite of your jeers, I'll make you rich. I'll give you everlasting life. Ah, that interests you, son. Always ready to live and enjoy, never ready to do and die. Bold blood takes all and gives nothing. This is gorgeous. Listen, grant the existence of food, air, and water, which are the gifts of nature. What one thing is essential to human life? Arms? Legs? No, I can cut them off and you'll live. Your head? I can decapitate you. Your heart? I can dig it out. But what would then happen? You'd bleed and I wouldn't be able to stop the flow. As soon as you'd be drained, your body would be useless. Why? Because you cannot live without blood. That is what life is dependent upon. Blood. You see, I reason, and still you think I'm mad. A madman cannot reason, son. I told you so before. I like you, bold blood. Come, I'll show you the living proofs of my scientific statement. I keep them in my workshop underneath. Better bring another candle. The place is always dark, and one won't be enough. Catch hold of the railing, son. These steps are mighty steep. Careful. Cold down here, isn't it? Keep that blanket wrapped around you. Your blood must not be chilled. Guess it isn't necessary to start a fire. We won't be down here long. You are the first to see this, son, and you'll find it mighty interesting. Instructive, too. I call it the morgue of life, for here lie the martyrs of life eternal. Some are only flesh and bones. That is why their ghosts keep prowling around like Wailing Jerry. Some are still living, but I keep them drugged. There is no suffering. Look at this one first, son. You see, his tongue is out. He cannot talk, and still he lives. You can feel his heart. And this specimen here has neither arms nor legs. I had a hard time pulling him through, but his heart is still a-pumping. Both of them have blood. They live. In this row of sacks are nothing but flesh and bones. These bodies are drained. They're dead. I keep their blood in separate jugs, all labeled over there. Notice, son, the blooded ones are living and the drained ones are dead. That proves the theory which forms the basis of my secret. Life cannot be maintained without blood. It is the very first essential. Are you cold, son? Your candle is shaking, so better tuck that blanket close about you. There. Now, Let us take our reasoning a step further. We know that blood will maintain life. Then why do we all die in a few short years? Because each body contains only one type of blood. Either weak blood, strong blood, old blood, or some other one of the various types. In no body will we find a mixture. You must remember that some of the types of which I speak tend to increase life and some tend to diminish it. Therefore, we conclude that a correct mixture of certain types, eliminating the undesirable ones, will materially lengthen life. As the average length of life increases, long-lived types will be forthcoming, which upon being added to our mixture will still further increase the human span of years, and so on to life eternal. Do you follow me, son? The process is simple, like all things when once thought out. My difficulty arose over the selection of the correct types for my life-giving potion. I had still to determine my formula, and that is where Jerry helped me out. This is Jerry's sack. He'll soon be nothing but a powder. That jug there contains what is left of his blood. I had to add certain chemicals to keep it from coagulating. You will notice that it is a rich red, strong blood. Listen, Jerry is unusually wild tonight. Guess he knows we're talking about him. Here's the blood of little Nina. It is lighter in color. Young blood. Bring your flame a little closer, son. I want to see you clearly. This is the blood of old Buck Weaver. It is very dark, almost black in the candlelight. Old blood. And there you've seen 3/4 of my formula. Strong blood to give the necessary vitality for a longer life. Young blood to keep the system pliant and active. Old blood to increase the span of years. But the thing is not complete. One other is needed to fill the formula. Bold blood. To lend the mental courage and keep the body going. That's where you come in, son. There, don't struggle, I've got you. Bold blood never says die. This is gorgeous. If you hadn't jumped me then, I couldn't have used you. Bold blood is essential. See, I can hold you like a baby. My hair is gray, my bones are old. Another proof of a certain phase of my theory, sir. A man's no better than his blood, and I drink strong blood. It's useless, son. Take it easy. Don't be selfish. Think of humanity. Your bones will be famous in my morgue of life. Wait, I'll strap you down. There. I said that science could make use of you. And now is the time. I envy your martyrdom. Let's see, my knife. Don't shout, son. You'll frighten little Nina. There. 'Twas thus that I turned it round in wailing Jerry. See how it gushes? Bold blood is brisk. This is gorgeous. Strong blood, young blood, old blood, bold blood. My formula is complete. I can live another century. Are the candles still lit, son? I can scarcely see. Everything is black. Black. My head is swimming. I feel all numb. It's Jerry. I can hear him wailing in my brain. He's gotten in. Light, son. Light. He's choking. Killing. Ah! The following is an extract taken from a feature story appearing in the Valley Courier, dated September 10th, 1923. What happened up there in the hermit's cabin will always remain a mystery. When Detective Sanderson's men broke in, they found a trap door in the floor standing open. The dugout below was littered with horrors. The ground was caked with dried pools of blood, while gallons of the same liquid filled numerous jugs, standing around like wine. Fully a dozen burlap sacks stood arrayed along the wall, each one containing the decomposed remains of a human body. 2 unidentified men, both drugged, were found tied down to logs. One had his tongue cut out, while the other was minus arms and legs. Both of them are strangers in this locality. They are not expected to live. Young Donaldson was found strapped down on his back with a long hunting knife protruding from a horrible wound in his chest. The hermit was huddled up close by. His whole body was a mass of blood. There are indications of a hemorrhage having occurred from his nose and mouth. It is thought that he died of apoplexy, but no definite statement can be made until after the autopsy. Donaldson was the local correspondent of the Associated Press. It is believed he intended collecting sufficient data to weave a feature story around the hermit of Ghost Mountain.